X-Men. Get it!
Zachary is also recording now. Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where we rank every story from A to Z.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Zach. Hi Adam. Do you know what A stands for in this scenario?
What? What does it stand for?
A is for Adam.
Oh, well...
But a different... No, A-T-O-M. Not A-D-A-M. Atom.
Like the name of the show.
Yes. Like the Battle 4.
Yes.
Yes. A is for Atom. B is for Bomb. That is what we are discussing today. E is for Extinction. Is the other one in all of that. We're not talking about E is for Extinction today. Though that would be a wild story to talk about. It's ranked really high on our list, right? Is it?
It is.
E is for Extinction's in the top 10, I think.
It is...
It's number 9. It's
yes.
number 9 on our list.
Good spot for it.
It is a good spot. We rank X-Men stories on this list here. We rank all of the X-Men stories on this list here. Or at least we try to. And today we're going to be talking about some more stories from Grant Morrison's new X-Men. In fact,
That's right.
In fact, we're just kind of going through everything we haven't covered in that first Ultimate Collection here. So that'll be fun. I am looking forward to... I was looking forward to catching up on this. And I'm going to say something bold, Adam. I'm going to say something actually buck wild.
Okay.
Grant Morrison, pretty good.
Agreed, 100%. However, after looking at these stories, and I just very quickly, when I was editing last week's episode, I noted you were like, next week, amazing stories. I don't know. We're going to find out.
I feel like there is one of the three stories we were ranking today is arguably the best piece of the Grant Morrison new X-Men. Arguably.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's an argument I would
yes.
make.
Yeah.
It's arguably up there. The argument I will make is that one of the pieces we're doing is actually the worst standalone story in Grant Morrison's time on X-Men. They're great. Love Gmo. Listen, Substack has issues. No one's going to deny that. If you want the juiciest industry gossip, go follow Grant Morrison's Substack. It's a delight.
Yeah, there's some real gems coming out of that thing, man.
Grant Morrison's like, I'm like in my 60s now. And I'm Grant Morrison. I probably will, if I want a job at Marvel, I could say whatever I wanted, and they would take me back. Like,
true.
I'd be like, hey, I think Marvel's a terrible company. Also, can I write, I don't know, what would Grant Morrison, Devil Dinosaur? I would love to see a Grant Morrison Devil Dinosaur. That would rule. Hold on. I said that as a joke. That would be great.
Has Grant Morrison ever done Hulk?
No, I don't believe so.
That'd be fun.
Grant only did a handful of things over at Marvel. There was Fantastic Four, 1, 2, 3, 4. There was the X-Men stuff. Marvel Boy. I'm trying to think of what else. It's not much.
I'm just trying to think of something they could go highbrow with.
No, I hear you, bud. But today we are talking about their new X-Men. Thanks to Patreon supporter Will. Will went over to patreon.com/comicsxf, said, folks, I like what you're doing. I like what you got going on, and would love for you to talk about these Grant Morrison stories. So,
what are we starting off with?
We're going to start off with, because we're completionists, we added one story in here that's not technically part of the titled part of this story, but is also like thematically tied to it and ties into where the story goes from here. And that is Germ-Free Generation. So we're looking at new X-Men 117 through 120. And this is the trick of this era of new X-Men, because we have a cavalcade of artists here. On these 4 issues, we get Igor Cordy doing the bulk of it, Grant Morrison obviously writing, and Ethan Van Sciver doing a few issues, which sucks. Hey, let's just be real here. Y'all know it. EVS is terrible, and I wish he didn't do a handful of issues in one of the most important runs of X-Men ever, but here we are.
Yeah, I think we should probably get the art thing out in front. And I'm a very art-driven guy when I read comics.
Sure.
I think that when we started doing this show and I realized what a Morrison head you were, I was kind of taken aback because outside of the Quitely stuff, I never really held this era in like super high regard. And a huge part of that is not because of the writing. The writing is pretty excellent all the way through, with a couple of duds. But one of the things that happened during this era was that when Quitely was not on the book, the artists that were hired to do it until they get up to, Phil Jimenez, and even Phil is at that stage is not up to Quitely's standard.
Yeah, Phil was a much younger artist at the time.
Exactly. But Cordy is, by all accounts, working on the most insane timetable I have ever heard in my life. He's claimed in interviews that he did some of these issues in under 2 weeks.
Yeah, there was a interview quote, not from Cordy directly, but from one of his collaborators, Ron Mars, saying that we found on CBR, just because I had always heard this, but I had never been able to source it. But Mars says, Igor eventually found himself working on X-Men, trying to pull the title out of habitual deadline doom. He often had to pencil and ink issues in 2 weeks. He told me he once penciled and inked an entire 22-page issue in a week because that's what was asked of him. Audience reaction was mixed at best.
I mean, that's an understatement.
The art's bad.
It is really bad.
The EVS stuff is... I don't like EVS's work in general.
Yeah.
It's... look, it's not great. It's not the worst thing in the world.
I want to get into
Cordy being rushed into 2 weeks.
No, it's two completely different things. If Cordy had time, I've seen polished work from him, and even if it's not like my favorite style, I mean Igor's got talent. My issues with EVS stem, obviously from the bad taste of Comicsgate and all of the hatred that comes out of that individual. But just from an artistic standpoint, I really do not like his stuff either. He has this weird way of flattening everything. He will do everything to, I think, what he might think is like hyper detailed. He'll draw every little twig on a branch. But the end result, when you look at it, doesn't tend to have a ton of depth to it. It drives me absolutely nuts. I just don't like it. And, every artist is going to suffer against finished artwork from Frank Quitely and Townsend doing inks. But here, it's just so bad. It drags these stories down. So we should now... Once we've gotten that out of the way, I think my take this time around in reading some of these was try to put the art aside, try to use my artist brain to imagine what this could look like, and concentrate on the writing, which is interesting. So what is the plot of Germ Free Generation?
So 117 is kind of the lead into it. It's thematically actually more important for the stuff that happens in Imperial afterwards. Mm-hmm. But we wanted to cover it here. It is the introduction of Beak, Barno Bohusk, who, Adam, I love my boy Beak.
You love Beak.
I love Beak. He gets introduced here, and it's a great Morrison idea that had not been used to its full potential in the past. Like, it's similar to some of the ideas of a guy like Chamber in Generation X, where he was like, I don't fit in, I'm ugly, being a mutant actually super sucks for me.
Yeah.
Except for this guy can't even, explode fire out of his mouth and do cool things. He's a chicken boy.
He's a bird boy.
He's a little chicken man from the Netherlands, and I love him. I love him so much. He's working with Beast, who is also dealing with the fact that, he's had a secondary mutation, and he's struggling with his new feline form. while the X-Men are struggling with the fact that there are now protesters out in front of the Xavier Institute and a huge number of new students because Xavier went on air and said, "Oh, I'm a mutant, and my school's been the home of the X-Men for years. Hi, guys." No. Except none of that was Xavier. It was actually Cassandra Nova, who we thought was dead, but instead inhabited Xavier's body.
Pretty wild stuff. So, we're getting this whole mutant subculture thing that was, going on in the books around this time that Morrison was driving at. We get introduced to the new Angel, who is the African-American dragonfly-winged girl.
Yeah, Angel Salvador. She's a human fly.
Yeah, she pukes up like green goo. Does not like Wolverine, but is willing to follow him back to school, where we learn that maybe she's not as tough as, she wants to come across as.
I like Angel Salvador a lot in concept and a good amount in practice, though I fully acknowledge and understand that there are issues with her depiction. I think it's very much, it should have been done by somebody else, but I think it's a very good idea to have hey, this is your new Kitty Pryde, except for she's not this perfect little white girl from Chicago. She's what if Kitty Pryde, but her life sucked.
In concept, it's fine. I think that her introduction and Beaks to a certain extent, but Beaks works a little bit better because even if the art is ugly, Beak is very much supposed to be this sort of like, freaky.
Beak's supposed to be an ugly
kid,
chicken boy, yeah.
Right? But Angel looks, kind of weird in the way that she's put together. Anyway, so we're also introduced to the U-Men here, and and we get reintroduced to John Sublime.
Yeah, because Sublime's there were some hints about Sublime in an annual that we have not yet covered on this podcast. But this is where we get to meet John Sublime in the flesh. We do not learn that he's actually a billion-year-old sentient bacteria man at this point, and also a drug. We don't get that yet. Grant has not blessed us with that revelation. We get introduced to John Sublime. We get introduced to Martha Johnson, who, people know her as No Girl, which is wrong, but it is what it is at this point. She's a brain in a jar. Telekinetic. Also, she has what is it, like super sci-fi blood or something that she has?
I don't know, but in her original incarnation, she is like being stabbed by a bunch of needles to keep her under control. And she's able to crack Emma.
Should we explain what the U-Men are real quick? Because we just said that there's a brain in a jar, and the book does a good job contextualizing that. We've mentioned the words "the third species," but we've also done a terrible job explaining it.
Yeah, the U-Men are followers of John Sublime's, basically a self-help book, which is, hey, if mutants are going to be the next evolution of humanity, humans should be able to do it too. And,
Homo
the
novissima.
idea... What's that?
It's Homo novissima.
Right. So the idea is that the U-Men are going to cut themselves off from the outside world. They
hermetically seal themselves into diving outfits.
Yep. But they are also going to periodically hunt down mutants for their body parts, essentially. If they have X-ray vision, they're going to steal their eyeballs. If they have wings, they're going to steal their wings. And the U-Men walk around in these biohazard suits and shoot razor blades out of their guns.
The U-Men rule. Listen, the U-Men are a great idea that have not been used to the extent that they should.
Yeah, they're a really fun concept. This all comes to a head at the end of this story when John Sublime thinks he's got the X-Men cornered as his new meat market for parts, and Jean Grey, in one of the greatest Jean Grey scenes of all time, basically comes out and is like, single-handedly, you better get off my lawn.
Jean Grey walks out of the school. There's protesters on one side. There are the U-Men on the other. And she says, "You're here at 2 a.m. to cause trouble? Do you have any idea how far out of your depth you are?" she's trying to be tricky with them, and then they try and attack, and she uses her telekinesis, which she just regained recently because she lost it in the Claremont Revolution. Don't worry about it. Stuff. Anyway, she keeps pushing it harder and harder to protect her school. It's like, you don't understand. I'm so much better than you. Don't threaten me. Don't patronize me. Don't ever endanger any of my students again. And then everyone's staring at her, and she says, "What's everyone looking at?" Because she has a phoenix raptor behind her. And while this is a plot point that I think a lot of people would normally like roll their eyes at, you gotta remember, like, this doesn't happen. This happens there's a tiny hints of this in the late 90s.
Right.
In the Steven Seagal stuff Seagal stuff that never goes anywhere. Mm-hmm. But like, this is them saying, "Hey, Jean's doing Phoenix stuff without the Phoenix Force. She's just doing Phoenix stuff now. What's up with that?"
Yeah,
it's a good, like, that's just as everything wraps up as Cyclops and Emma and Martha have defeated the U-Men, as Jean has learned from the comatose Beak that Charles Xavier is not himself right now, as Wolverine and Angel come back to the school. It's a very good moment.
Yeah, I believe we skipped over an important plot point, which is that Cassandra Nova has been pretending to be Xavier.
Right.
Just in time to get picked up by the Shi'ar to go visit Lilandra in space. And right before she left, she's basically controlled Beak into beating Beast half to death with a titanium baseball bat. So
Beak's very upset about this, too.
And he's been traumatized, to say the least. So this story, I think, has a lot of moving parts. I think it's interesting. Is it the nicest thing to look at? Absolutely not. And I think that brings it down quite a bit for me. But it is introducing some really fun, interesting things. And it does have that really cool Jean scene at the end. There's good Beast stuff here.
This is the arc where Glob Herman is technically introduced. And by introduced, I mean drawn on the page for the first time by EVS, which is just really upsetting to me.
Well, he's always going to be on that Wikipedia page, unfortunately. So
yeah, but Glob's always going to live in my heart. EVS did not draw a single issue where Glob Herman says a word or does anything except for stands in the background. So if he gets the credit for a skeleton man in pink jello, so be it.
It's okay. It is what it is. We should try and rank this.
We should rank this. We rank X-Men stories on this X-Men podcast about X-Men. We're trying to rank them all. We got to rank them all, and we're getting there. We have, in fact, 612 stories on our list of all the X-Men stories of all time, ranked from best to worst. Number 1 is The House of X, The Powers of 10. Number 100 is Everything is Sinister from Uncanny X-Men Volume 2. The Rogue miniseries from the 90s is at number 200 right now. Number 300 is the Nightcrawler vs. Arcade story from Uncanny 204. Number 400 is Aurora Before the Storm. Number 500 is Cyberforce / X-Men Volume 1, Number 1. Man, that's at 500 now. There's 112 X-Men stories worse than that. Guys, X-Men may not be a good franchise. I don't know what to tell you. Number 600 is What If 37. That's What If Wolverine was Lord of the Vampires during Inferno. And 612 is the Draco. So, I don't think this is the worst new X-Men story.
I am very curious to see where you would like to start.
I'm looking around. So, Planet X is at 83, and I think Planet X is better.
I would agree.
Murder at the Mansion is at 137. Murder at the Mansion is also better.
I agree.
Assault on Weapon Plus is at 160. That's better.
I agree.
Flipping through. Here Comes Tomorrow is at 286. And I think Here Comes Tomorrow is better. At 319 is Ambient Magnetic Fields, New X-Men 132. I think this is better than Ambient Magnetic Fields.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, so we know we have our range. We're sort of hovering around the 300 mark here. I think this is a good place for it. I'm just trying to think of where to put it because we're talking.
I think it's better than something like 301, the Zeb Wells Necrotia stuff with New Mutants.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I also think it's probably better than a 291 X-Force -1.
Yeah, it's probably better than, I say probably, it's better than X-Men the Exterminated, and better than Uncanny 600.
I think
it's like right there, right?
Yeah, we're like right there. I don't think it's better than Uncanny 148 to 150.
Which is the story where Claremont figures out what he wants Magneto to be and redefines the character forever.
Yeah. I think that this story is more clever than Uncanny X-Men 600, but I think in my heart I like 600 better. So I'll leave it up to you.
It can go under 600, and Grant, buddy, not a slide on you. I think the writing is very clever in this one. Deadlines were rough. But the deadlines were in service of something, Adam.
That's right. And that is a enough said issue.
People, I think, when they read these, especially this one, they don't have the larger context of the enough said month, where Marvel decided that comics didn't need words for a month.
Right. We've covered at least one of those.
We covered
forget which one it was.
The X-Men, the Uncanny X-Men issue.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And we've covered the Extreme X-Men issue.
That I seem to remember as well.
The Uncanny one's part of the time when Banshee started X-Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And the Extreme one's when Gambit did a thieving in this one. Here's the thing. Salvador LaRocca is not as good of an artist as Frank Quitely.
No.
Who is credited in this as Frank Quietly, which is even funnier.
It's in quotes, but it's very, very, very funny.
This is Grant Morrison doing a silent issue with Frank Quitely. Grant understands comics. Say what you want about him. Grant understands comics probably better than any of us.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Quitely understands the form of comics. Say you may not like Frank's style, how Quitely renders figures and characters. You cannot say that Frank Quitely does not have a masterful grasp on sequential storytelling in comics.
True. Yeah. That's true.
One of the greatest of all times when it comes to that. Mm-hmm. And this issue is just Frank Quitely going off.
Oh, it's a masterpiece. I mean, let's just look at the cover for a second. I mean,
it's New X-Men 121 Silence. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
You knew, right? You listened to this probably. You knew? Folks, if you don't know, you don't need to read the rest of the comic to get this. Go read 121 like real quick. It'll take you just a minute. Go see what happens here.
Yeah, soak in all the details and the way it's done. The cover features just a wonderful piece of artwork here of Cassandra Nova's head, and then inside the shadow of her forehead is the imprisoned face of Professor Xavier, and there's these lines that look like prison bars across his eyes. It's just right off the bat from the cover, it's just like absolutely brilliant. Now, we've talked about this issue when we covered Giant Size X-Men and Russell Dauterman's tribute to this issue, which Russell Dauterman is also a master of the form, and I think we complimented the heck out of those visuals. But this is the original. This is the source material, and the story is fairly simple. Jean and Emma are going to go and try and psychically rescue Professor Xavier's psyche out of the body of Cassandra Nova, realizing now that the two of them have body swapped. And because it's the astral plane, it allows Quitely to kind of play around with, whatever imagery he wants. And it is just so cool.
Yeah. It's very difficult to tell a complex story like this. Like, this is not simple ideas in such a way that it's engaging and clear. And that's what this is. You get Jean and Emma go into the mindscape and rescue them. You get their character interactions. Like, Jean doesn't trust Emma at this point. Jean thinks Emma slept with her husband already.
Yeah, you can tell their dislike for each other as this happens. But the visuals are also very psychedelic. Once they enter the mindscape, the astral plane, they're actually traveling down this spiral staircase. But the way that that's depicted is through this looping spiral of extended bodies and Professor X emotions, all these different faces. In a different artist's hands, this could be like an absolute mess, but you follow the sequence and you realize what's happening. And at the end of that staircase, you open onto this borderless splash page of Jean emerging from the shadows of that staircase out to look at another tower, which is being sort of blasted with spotlights. And she knows that Professor X is being held prisoner in there. And that page turn is stunning. It's not often when you turn a page on a comic and it just like takes your breath away. That one is just like mind blowing to me.
Jean then finds Professor X, while Emma stays behind to provide some defense. Jean goes to find Professor X, gets into this finds a weird snow globe with Professor X's giant brain near it. Swims with some sperm to see Professor X's conception. And the fact that Professor X had a twin in the womb who he fought to death.
Well, that's the craziest thing about this, is that because
this is a very clear comic that does involve a baby-on-baby murder.
It is a silent issue that very clearly gives you the origin story of Cassandra Nova, and it is absolutely bonkers. Like, it is elaborated on later in the next arc, but the fact that it is introduced here with no dialogue whatsoever is fascinating.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And also there's a page where a baby does a baby murder.
I will say one of the interesting things here is contrasting there is a shot of Professor Xavier's mother falling backwards down a flight of stairs. And it's very interesting to see the time period that is coded as in like respects to what we just saw in X Lives or X Deaths of Wolverine.
Oh, because X Deaths of Wolverine just was like, hey, was Professor Xavier born in 1820?
It's very strange, like the comparison.
Where all of the stories we're talking about today are actually pretty explicit that Professor X is like 43 years old.
Right.
Which is wrong. And part of that's because Patrick Stewart was born old. So we just always code him as much older. And even then, it's wild to see this issue. It's so good. And it also, it not only shows the Jean and Emma dynamic, but it then further emphasizes how good Jean is, because Emma has been built up as like this great telepath and so incredible in all of this. And she's wildly ineffective in this, where Jean kind of single-handedly takes care of everything.
Emma is like attacked by these Cassandra Nova doors and coated in like green mucus and like SpaghettiOs and right. And like Jean is just like very casually building bridges with her mind and unchaining Xavier with no issues and bringing him back to the beach to safety. It's quite the contrast. So it does a fabulous job. Now there is one line of dialogue at the end, which is
the greatest line of dialogue to ever end a comic.
Professor X tried to kill his twin sister while they were both still in the womb. We ought to talk. It's great.
We ought to talk. We ought to talk. It's so good. Silence is a masterpiece. Morrison's scripting on this is phenomenal. The restraint to say, no, I want to use this to tell this weird centerpiece of what's going to be like the first, year and a half, 2 years of the book. I want this to be the pivot point. Also, we're not going to use words. Frank, you can go to town on it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Frank Quitely and Grant Morrison. So freaking good, buddy. Like I got Flex Mentallo over here, and that was their first one.
I just
That's
read
where they started.
I just read Pax Americana recently for the first time, and it just like blew my mind.
Oh, Pax Americana, where Frank Quitely says, yeah, the 9-panel grid's cool. What if I did a 16-panel grid on every page?
And
What
then
if
at
I
some
did
point,
more?
Yeah, at some point I'm going to go atomic with my panels, and they're going to be so tiny you're not going to be... Oh, it's great. All right, let's rank this. This is an interesting one. I don't... We have E for Extinction all the way up at number 9. And
I think E is for Extinction is a better comic, as is Riot at Xavier's.
I would agree. So those are at 9
I think
and
you
12
could argue.
respectively.
I think you could argue that Silence is the best part of the Morrison New X-Men, and I would listen to that argument even if I would disagree. What I do think it's better than is number 51 on our list, which is the Zorn issue by the late great Jean-Paul Leon, New X-Men 127.
I would agree. I think it's better than Grand Design at 44.
Do you think? Actually, I'm gonna jump up to what's going to be a very comparable story.
Okay.
Number 28 on our list is Wounded Wolf.
Barry Windsor
I
Smith.
love Wounded Wolf.
Yeah.
I think this is better than Wounded Wolf.
Oh, really? Okay. See, I don't know. It's a great comparison because what Barry Windsor Smith is doing in that issue is also an artist showcase, as you know, it was with Life Death and Life Death 2. This is tough because we're putting something a little more contemporary against these like absolute classics, but this is also an absolute classic. You know?
Yeah, that's the thing. This comic is 20 years old now.
Yeah. I don't feel comfortable putting this ahead of, let's say, the Brood Saga at 30.
Oh, I do. I do.
Really?
I think this is better than the Brood Saga. Yes.
I think it's an amazing piece of artwork. I think it's an amazing reveal. I just... I hesitate a little bit.
I would. Here's what I'll say. If I was ranking these and Adam was not in the picture, this would be number 25 on the list, above the Murder World arc of Uncanny X-Men 123 to 124, and below Magneto Infamous, the Cullen Bunn, Gabriel Hernandez Walta stuff.
Yeah, Walters is pretty good too.
However,
okay,
Adam, you are a equal member of this podcast and of this list.
Well, we have Barry Windsor Smith at 28, and then down at 30, below it at 31, we have Life Death 2, both Barry Windsor Smith showcases. I would squeeze this in between the Brood Saga and Life Death 2, making it 31. But I could be convinced if you want to try and push me up. I don't know.
Here's what I'd say. The difference between something like this and something like Wounded Wolf, in my mind, is that Wounded Wolf is telling a very simple story. Mm-hmm. It's beautifully told, but it is guy has to save little girl. That's all it is. This Silence is trying to explain prenatal baby murder.
That's true.
In psychedelics. And like there are very few comics I think that get psychedelic mindscape stuff as good as this one does, because it's very easy to get wrong. And frankly, excuse me, and quite frankly, Frank Quitely gets it right here. So okay. I would say, what if we found ourselves a compromise above Wounded Wolf but below Fall of the Mutants from X Factor?
I think that, all right, let's meet in the middle there. I think that's a good spot for it. You know, I don't want to parse it too much because I absolutely love this issue. It's just, I always get hung up on like, you know, what's a classic? And this is a classic. Like, I mean, this is what? How many years old is this now? Like 20 years old?
It's 20 years old now.
It's crazy.
This was 20 years ago.
Yeah. That's wild.
We have a handful of things that are pretty high on this list that are more recent than this. Mm-hmm. This is one of the best X-Men stories of all time. Like, go check it out.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Unfortunately, the last story we're going to talk about is also saddled with those art issues that we talked about before, and it is Imperial.
It's bookended by Frank Quitely.
That's what saves
by Frank Quitely.
That's what saves it, is that it is bookended by an amazing pair of Frank Quitely issues. This is Imperial, which goes from New X-Men 122 through what, 126?
126.
Yeah. So we're just keep chugging along here.
Yeah. The thing is, while Professor X was possessed, he decided to go, as he always does whenever he's having a hard time, go have sex with his space bird girlfriend.
Yes. Pretty much.
And we open up with a pretty big smash cut where they say, hey, that hasn't gone well, actually, because that's actually Cassandra Nova, and she is trying to destroy the Shi'ar Empire.
It is a fantastic opening splash page. Of the Empress, my Empress, the wheel is broken. The world is lost. The stakes are epic from page 1. And we also get a glimpse of what Cassandra Nova is looking like now in this twisted...
The Mamandri form?
Yes, it is this like
which
giant,
rules?
multiple armed thing. With,
it's like
with,
an aura around the body of Xavier.
Yeah, it's kind of like he's floating in a jello mold, and he is all crooked and like exorcist twisted up and red-eyed and like has this demonic smile on his face. And their solution to this, I always loved this bit, is that they're going to throw Smasher to the earth. Just in time for the...
Smasher's the only living being who's going to be able to travel for space unaided.
Whatever that is.
The only one that's going to be able to get there. Smasher does make it to Earth. Smasher does, unfortunately, tell the first living beings he has found that Cassandra Nova is coming.
Right.
And those living beings are cows.
Yes.
Now, Adam, do you want to know a beautiful thing?
Yes, I do.
Do you know those cows come back?
Please
Buddy,
tell me.
You know those?
Are they the Skrull cows?
Those are not the Skrull cows. The Skrull cows had at this point been ground down into hamburger meat and eaten by the Skrull kill crew.
That's terrible. That's terrible.
No, it rule. Okay, hold on. I love the Skrull kill crew. It's great. Like it's a logical conclusion to that story.
But how do the cows? How do these cows come back? I don't know this story.
Oh, so you know Smasher, right?
Yeah.
In Smasher's exospecs,
right?
The glasses.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, the farm he lands on, it turns out, is the farm of Cable's future wife.
Oh wow, that's
so
crazy.
She finds the exospecs and then becomes the new Smasher, the first human in the Imperial Guard.
You're saying you said Cable. You mean Cannonball, right?
I do mean Cannonball. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
We go. Okay, all right. Now I understand. I remember this connection now.
Yes, it's fantastic.
It's just
Izzy gets the exospecs from this,
which is great.
Listen, Jonathan Hickman did it good on that one.
He does his homework.
That's a great
right?
call. Grant Morrison does their homework on this one too, though.
Absolutely. Lots of really great character development here. We get Jean and Scott together. Beast is really having a hard time. And Cyclops decides, hey,
Beast
I've got an idea.
In this arc, or in the one before, I think in the one before it is when, in 117, Beast and Trish Trilby break up. And Beast is feeling pretty down on himself about that. In his de-evolution.
That does result in a rather unfortunate scene later in this in this issue where he breaks. Well, Trish has already broken up with him, but he basically tells her he thinks he might be gay or doesn't think he likes humans anymore, and Beast is just all kinds of confused. I
understand what Morrison is doing here.
Yeah,
I think Morrison may not have thought this one through all of the way in the implications, but regardless,
Cyclops has gone to visit Zorn. He thinks Zorn can help heal.
Because everyone's sick too. Everyone's feeling real sick.
Everyone has the flu. No one knows what it is. We find out later in this arc that there are tiny little microscopic sentinels that Cassandra Nova put inside of all of them. and that is killing them from the inside. So Xavier is dying inside of Cassandra Nova's body. So that's why Cyclops goes to try and find Zorn to see if he can heal him, because I guess Zorn can bring birds back to life or something. I don't know.
Yeah, Zorn has healing powers.
Right. And I don't know, like the middle of this gets really weird because we have the Imperial Guard coming. They've been convinced by Cassandra Nova to destroy all of mutant kind. There is a boy that is dating Esme who turns out to be Stuff.
Yeah, that's Esme Cuckoo. The Cuckoos were previously introduced, but this is where they start to actually become primary characters.
Right.
Like they drive a lot of the action in this. Actually, they drive the resistance of the students with themselves an Angel and Beak.
Yeah, the invasion could not have taken place at a worse spot, though, because the press is at the Xavier Mansion trying to listen to a psychic press conference by Jean, and all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, because all of the Imperial Guardsmen get there. Stuff is like, actually, I am a Shi'ar Super Guardian.
We should explain what Stuff is, because he kind of looks like Dupe, but he's not Dupe.
Stuff does kind of look like Dupe.
Right?
Stuff is a shape-shifting alien.
Yeah, he looks like a green jelly bean with like all kinds of little tentacle thingies hanging off of him, like, and he has one big red eye. So the Cuckoos are a little disturbed by this, to be honest.
That's fair. Listen,
Yeah.
that's fair.
So
Love is blind, but I'm not sure they were in love.
no. So Wolverine is kicking some Super Guardian butt, but
Which definitely happens in the issue that I don't think Cordy's ever said which issue it had drawn a week. It's this one.
that one looks real rough. Yeah.
It's 124. Great cover with Zorn huffing some potato chips. But Igor Cordy's art on the inside, I couldn't draw a comic book in a week. I couldn't draw a comic book in a month that looked this good.
Yeah, I mean, there are still some
Cordy.
things here that still work. But
In fact, actually, I'm not going to blame Cordy. Joe Quesada, Mark Powers, Pete Franco, editorial team, what were you doing?
yeah. Why are we rushing this masterpiece, right? There is quite a bit of kind of stalling in this story, though.
Yes.
We're constantly waiting for the Imperial Guard to, actually break through. We're having all these side conversations with moving the press and moving the students around. And, it really is just kind of like a holding pattern until we get to this climax. Now, what Jean tries to do, which is really interesting and kind of forecasts some things that happened like in the Krakoan era, is that she backs up Professor X inside her brain and then later figures out how to back him up in a little piece in every single mutant's brain in the world via Cerebra, and then piece it all back together at the end. Now, the Frank Quitely issue that wraps all this up is fantastic, and that is also the one where they convince Cassandra Nova to go back into her body, not realizing that Emma has made Stuff be Cassandra Nova and shapeshift him, and they put Cassandra Nova into like remedial school, psychic remedial school, which always was a great little punchline to this. The last issue of this is pretty fantastic.
And like even then, I give the Tom Taylor resolution to X-Men Red some side eye because I look at it and say, "Oh, you just had to teach Cassandra Nova about the power of love and empathy." That's fine. And I think I don't like that because it happens with the magical flip of the switch.
Sure.
Where in this one, it's like, hey, we've got to take some time to educate this life. But also, like, Jean straight up says, you may be an expert on fear, isolation, pain, hatred, loss, but you have no idea what friendship is. You don't understand the mechanics of emotion, of people who stick together and support one another. You just seem really vulnerable to me. Like, that's what she says before they do this whole trick to her, to Cassandra Nova. Like, she is just saying, you gotta learn about love, Cassandra Nova. But Grant Morrison's a better writer than Tom Taylor.
Well, they spell it out that Cassandra Nova is not really a person. They're very clear about defining what the Mumadrai is, and that it is more of this sort of like emotional force. So there's
the Shi'ar anti-self that we all must defeat before we are born. And unfortunately, this anti-self clung to
a side of a sewer wall in a miscarriage. I mean, it's it's graphic. But there is the implication that, like, for all of her masterminding schemes, there's sort of like an element of Cassandra Nova that's kind of dumb, like willing to just follow the passion and the emotion and the anger, and to get what she wants. And it's how they ultimately succeed.
Cassandra Nova is, for all the plotting, a very blunt instrument.
Yes.
She has one goal at all times, and it's total annihilation. Like, that's all she really wants, and it's just driven by her only emotion being hate, which is a big Morrison idea. And I'm very excited to see what Steve Orlando does with Cassandra Nova in Marauders, because Orlando gets Morrison in a way that a lot of writers don't.
Very excited.
And I want to see what Steve does with that.
Only other note,
it does end with Cassandra Nova being in school and Professor Xavier saying, "Shall we start from the very beginning?"
Right.
A is for Adam.
Yes.
B is for bomb.
Draws a big X on the board, though, not an A.
E is for extinction, actually, which they do have to go back and say, Cassandra, you did a real bad on that one.
Yeah.
Though I do like how they, like, that ties back. It ties back to her first story. Like, it ties the whole, like, this is collected in one Ultimate Edition, like one larger trade paperback that collects everything up from the first issue of New X-Men to the end of Imperial. And it's a great, like, that's a great capstone on, here, you want one more or less complete story? Mm-hmm. There's going to be more to this, but do you want one complete, like, maxi story? Here you go. This would be a good run.
I agree. It does a nice job of encapsulating it all. I think the other good thing about this is that we get this really breaking point for Beast in here as well, where he does try to sort of, with Wolverine by his side, commit to being the Beast, being the animal in his attack on Cassandra Nova. And it just, like, breaks the dude, like, he's whimpering in a corner at a certain point, like, before this story is over.
It's Beast, who is a scientist, who is a man of culture, who is choosing to accept that he cannot deny his nature.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting topic when you've got a character like Wolverine, whose entire point is, I am denying my baser nature.
Right.
But Beast is tapping into it because he's too far on the other side. And it
works.
Grant Morrison's a very good storyteller who is let down by their editorial team right now because they gave artists who either weren't capable or did not have enough time to be capable these stories.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Though I do still think that this one has a lot of fluff in the middle of it. So
I think plotting wise, of Morrison's plots in the new X-Men run, this is the weakest one.
Yeah, I would agree. So I think this is not as good as Germ Free Generations at 290.
It's not as good as Germ Free Generation. How do you feel about it compared to Ambient Magnetic Fields?
No, that's it.
That's at 321. That's the Polaris issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. I don't think this is in another Imperial Guard story. I don't think this is as good as at 320. We have the time Cannonball fought Gladiator, and they all went to space. I think that's better than this.
While I think Assad Ribic is a better artist, I do not think that this. I do think that this story overall is better than Dark Reign the List Wolverine #1, where Jason Aaron, who his Punisher stuff's out again, loves to write stories about how much God is bad.
Yeah.
But doesn't do it at a level that like is adding anything new to the conversation.
Nah, it's a broken record at this point. All right, so the real question is this better or worse than the time Sabretooth got a pet tiger, Omega Red got a pet tiger, and Sabretooth was in charge of Weapon X?
It's better than the first half of that story. It's not better than the Ricardo Lopez Ortiz issues.
Okay, so is it better or worse than Savage Avengers 1 to 5, 322?
The City of Sickles?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
That I think this is better.
Probably.
Yeah, this is probably
It
better
probably
than that.
is. That's a dumb comic. Like,
Yeah.
and no shade to friend of the show Jerry Duggan. Jerry knew he was writing a dumb comic.
Yeah, he's writing an action movie. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'll leave it up to you whether you think this is better or worse than New X-Men 132. I just don't think it's better than that Uncanny X-Men run with the Joe Mad stuff.
I mean, I'm not gonna fight too hard for it because I think it's exactly on the same level as 132.
Yeah.
But do you know what? Do you know what's beautiful about 132?
What's that?
Wasn't drawn in a week.
No, that's true. All right.
It's. I don't want to hammer too hard on Igor Cordy, but boy, oh boy, is that some of the worst published art in X-Men history.
It's tough.
Again, most artists had more than a week.
Yes.
Most artists had more than a week.
Yeah. All right. So, wow. Now, have we done all of New X-Men at this point, or we still,
No!
we still have another chunk, right?
We got the annual. We got a lot of stuff in the. We got. Adam, I'm grabbing Ultimate Collection number 2.
Yeah. What have we done
Right off my bookshelf right now.
What have we not done before Planet X?
Yeah. So Planet X is in the Ultimate Collection number 3.
Right.
Ultimate Collection number 2 ends with Murder at the Mansion. It's got Riot at Xavier's in it, which we've covered. There's the Dust issue.
Oh, right.
Where
Dust
she
gets
shows up,
introduced.
ambient magnetic fields. Oh, there's the first Phantom X story. Mm-hmm. And then there is a one shot before that first Phantom X. Actually, we'd probably tie it into the first Phantom X story because it has a lot to do with some of the other things that happen in there. Or we wouldn't. Who knows what we would do? But it's a Jean Paul Leon one shot
love
really
Jean Paul
about
Leon.
both Scott and Emma, and about Angel and Beak.
Nice. All right.
So we're actually rounding the end of New X-Men.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
But we're running out of
Morrison
favorite
stories.
stuff.
We're not running out of X-Men stories by a long shot.
Oh no, we are not running out of X-Men stories. We may soon be running out of the good X-Men stories.
I don't know. We'll see. We've ranked some bad ones too. You know, we'll see how it goes.
We got plenty of stuff on the list already to still cover. So we've got we've got some time.
Yeah. So what's going on with you?
Work is the worst thing in the world right now, so I'm very busy. But I actually just made an appearance that was recorded a bit ago, but just aired last week as we record this on Play Comics Cast, where it's people talking about comic book adapted video games. Mm-hmm. I talked about X-Men Legends 2, The Rise of Apocalypse, a video game I played a lot of on the PlayStation Portable. So go check out that. That's a very fun time. What about you, Adam?
I, too, was a guest on Play Comics podcast, talking about a video game I had never played before, Blade 2 for PS2. However, we had a really fun conversation about Blade and the Blade movies. So check that out. I am also going to be on an upcoming episode of Gosh Golly Wow, the Excalibur podcast that is hosted by Anna Peppard of Comics XF, and it is a lot of fun. We're talking about a not so great issue of Excalibur, but
which one?
It's the one where they try and do the entire chronological story of the Phoenix and try and make it make sense with Jean and Rachel.
Bad.
It's not good, and it was a lot of fun to talk about. So that'll be coming soon.
I'm gonna, at this point, here's the thing. I'll eventually not be busy, and I think by that point, it'll be like the Ben Robb era of that podcast, and I'll be like, let's go! Let's do this!
Yeah, it's funny. You're talking about us running out of stories, but like they asked me, what have you covered of Excalibur? And I was like, not a lot, actually. So anyway, if you want to find me on Twitter, it's at Arthur Stacy. And Zach, what do we have cooking for next week's show?
Next week, we're going to talk about stories that were drawn by Pepe Larraz, who's one of the artists on the #1 ranked story on our list. So it's Pepe Larraz. You know it's going to be good. It's going to be a visual treat for an audio medium. But until then, folks, this has been Battle of the Atom, and we hope you survived the experience.
Get it!